Hey everyone, the Watch Talk crew is back, and today we're bringing a fresh debate to the table. Now, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on all of our latest videos. But before we do that, we've got to get into a wrist check. So, Justin, what are you rocking today?
Start off, I'm going with the Rolex GMT Master 2. The new one, a
Gorgeous.
Jubilee bracelet, which I love this watch on the Jubilee bracelet. We were talking a little bit off camera
great.
how how appropriate this watch or how nice this watch looks on Jubilee.
Yeah, I'm firmly in the oyster camp on most things, but the Pepsi Jubilee just works for me.
It's beautiful.
Great choice.
Yeah. What do you guys got on?
What are you wearing?
New pickup for me, palm dial date just.
Hey.
You guys know how long I've wanted this one. I go back a year and a half and I'm like, oh, best release of 2021, give me that leafy dial. Finally got the leafy dial, super happy about that.
Great watch, glad to see
And
it in
again,
person.
oyster bracelet, yeah. It's such a busy dial, I felt the Jubilee and fluted was a bit much.
Well deserved. I'm still in the Jubilee camp, but looks great on your wrist. Congrats.
What about you?
I am bringing a Rolex Cellini to the table. This was my first love and decided to kind of lean into my debate a little bit later. But
okay, a little foreshadowing here, I see.
A lot of foreshadowing. So as we mentioned, we're back to a debate, which means we're all going to bring an individual topic to the table, give our points on it, and ultimately decide what we like most. The best part is so will you. So make sure you guys are participating in the comments. We've loved seeing all of your opinions, and not everybody's in the same camp as us, so keep it up. We really appreciate it. Ripley, you've got the table first. What'd you bring today?
What do we got?
Well, two icons, two flex pieces, and two of Gerald Genta's greatest works. Obviously, he designed the AP Royal Oak first. The Nautilus was the follow-up effort. Two of the most instantly recognizable designs, both near impossible to get at retail, and both have, they kind of helped pioneer the genre of luxury sports watches and are largely responsible for the whole integrated bracelet thing that's going on right now. So between these two, I think that, obviously Gerald Genta made a lot of watches, but I think if you were going to put two designs head to head, it would be these two.
What a combo.
Yeah, this is like an iconic face-off, right? Talking about Royal Oak versus Nautilus. I mean, like you said, two integrated bracelets, the same designer. And we happen to have two amazing gold pieces here today,
Our
right?
examples are...
It's not these two exact watches. We're talking about the models in general, but I mean, two fantastic examples to have the debate over.
Yeah, casually, just solid gold examples.
So I definitely have an opinion on these, but I'm curious to see, since you brought it up, where do you stand on this? What do you think?
This is an interesting one for me. The Nautilus came second, and in my opinion, at least on the wrist, as far as my personal tastes, I think the Nautilus is a more successful design. Everyone's second draft is better than their first. It makes sense. That being said, I mean, once you eliminate how it feels on my wrist and my own personal preferences, if I actually had to take one of these two watches in front of me, I would take the Royal Oak. It was the first one. It was the watch that pioneered the whole luxury sports watch category. It was the original design that, this same design language he pioneered with the Royal Oak can be seen throughout a myriad of his other works, including the Nautilus. And although I think I actually prefer the design of the Nautilus, I'd go for the Royal Oak just on the historical merit, and also it's the angular bracelet, the screws on the bezel, it's a bit more bold, and if I'm going for a massive statement piece, I'm gonna go fully lean into the bold, take the original effort, and happily sit with my Royal Oak.
Okay, that's
Bold
respectable,
choice.
yeah. I will respectfully disagree. I am going to take the Nautilus. Like you said, the second draft is usually better than the first, right? And I feel like that's exactly what's going on with these two watches. I just think that the overall aesthetics of the Nautilus is a little bit cleaner, a little bit smoother and nicer and more polished, and I get what you're saying about the being bolder with the Royal Oak, right? It has definitely like a more angular case shape, and even the way that the bracelet is integrated to it, it's more so. It's more integrated, if that's a thing. I mean, it's not, but it is. It just seems like it's it's more of a statement piece, and there's just more going on. But I personally just like the design of the Nautilus better. I love the thinness of the Nautilus. I'm not a mega fan of integrated bracelets anyway. I mean, we've talked about it before. That's, I kind of prefer the non-integrated bracelet. But out of these two, I definitely think the Nautilus has the better looking integrated bracelet. So two great watches. Love the designer, both iconic. Definitely give the Royal Oak props for being the first.
Absolutely.
And that, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that, right? It's, history in watches is such a thing that I do love that, and
Yes.
and it's super iconic. But personally, if I'm choosing one, I'm choosing the Nautilus.
I love it. So Ripley, it seems like you're leaning more into the history component. Honestly, is there a Nautilus without the Royal Oak?
There's also the history component and what these two watches mean to their respective brands.
Okay.
For me, Patek, I don't necessarily think of the Nautilus as the quintessential Patek. I think of a highly complicated Calatrava looking watch. And if I'm going to spend a lot of money on a Patek, I'm probably going to get like a Grand Complication or something. Whereas for me, I know they make other watches, but for me, the Royal Oak is Audemars Piguet. And if I'm getting an AP, I want a Royal Oak. Whereas if I'm getting a Patek, I want a Perpetual Calendar Moon Phase or something like that. So I think it's not just the historical perspective, it's what these two models mean to their respective manufacturers. And I think it's the combined effort of those that really kind of gives it.
This is true. They are both like the headline for their brand, though, right? I mean, like I agree with you. When I'm getting a Patek, I probably want some Grand Complication. I want something like you said that Patek does better than anyone. But I feel like the Nautilus is, it's synonymous with Patek. When people hear that and they see it, it's like that's the watch you think about. And the same with AP, you see the watch, that's what you think about it. So to me, it's kind of like a head-to-head, like it's two headliners going at it, like first stars, and it's both of the companies' kind of big headliner watches, and they match up, and I think you can go either way on them. But I do think that the Nautilus it's an important watch for Patek.
Well, listen, I'll be very straightforward. I love these examples on the table. I am definitely more of an aesthetics and strictly from a wearable standpoint, I'm a Nautilus person. There's no shame in the Royal Oak game, but for me, I think version 2 is definitely better. It's a little bit cleaner, a little bit softer, a little bit more wearable for me. The screws on the top of the AP Royal Oak, instantly out. Again, just my opinion, but at that point, those are our opinions.
And this is coming from someone who loves Cartier.
Yes.
So if you're opposed to screws on bezel, okay. Well,
I'm opposed to the screws on the bezel on the Royal Oak and the Cartier, for the record.
Me out hard. Whatever. Well, these are just our choices. You guys have handcuffed me and made me choose. So now we're gonna make you guys choose. When it comes to the Royal Oak, when it comes to the Nautilus, which one are you taking? Sound off in those comments. It's definitely our favorite part. So we've had a hearty discussion between AP and Royal Oak. Justin, what are you bringing to the table?
Okay, so I am going to discuss the age-old question about quartz versus automatic.
Ooh.
So I'm not saying which one's better, quartz versus automatic, right? But people give quartz a hard time, especially in luxury watches.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. I don't. I actually love quartz. I think quartz is great, and I'm here to defend quartz. I'm here to officially defend quartz.
Okay.
So my question is, does quartz have a place in your collection, and specifically in luxury watches?
Okay.
Because, like I said, a lot of people instantly, when they hear quartz, are out. They're out of the game. And I get it. I like automatic. I like quartz. They're just different. And we start talking about numbers and performance, it's kind of less of a conversation. Quartz wins in pretty much all of those categories. Reliability. We talk about the reliability of the Grand Seiko movements, right? So, we're talking a couple seconds a day on an automatic, and they're
handful of seconds a year.
5 seconds a year in terms of accuracy. So, quartz wins those hands down, yet still a lot of times I think it gets overlooked. And I have a couple great examples here, both Grand Seikos.
Oh, beautiful.
We have their quartz here on the right, and we have the high beat automatic on the left. Two great watches, definitely both have a spot in my box. But yeah, I want to know, do you guys look down on quartz? Are you passing up on a watch just because it's quartz? Or you think that there's no problem? You can add the quartz to your...
So you're saying it belongs in your collection?
I'm absolutely saying it belongs. And I'll tell you why. A couple things. One, we talk about the performance. A lot of times quartz just outperforms an automatic movement. Also convenience. I think it's really convenient to pick up a watch that wasn't on my winder and I haven't worn, put it on, and it's set. And accurate, extremely accurate. So, there's something to be said for quartz. I don't think it gets enough love. I'm here to give it some and find out what everyone else thinks. Where do you guys stand on this one?
I firmly agree with you. I think quartz can kind of get a bad rap because it's easy to just write it all off into the same category, but there's a drastic difference between what Grand Seiko does in a 9F quartz movement and then what is in your $100 mall watch. Yes, it's using the same principles of technology, but the same could be said for a $100 automatic watch versus a Patek Grand Complication. There's drastically different mechanisms involved, and the same goes for quartz. I think there's definitely a place for quartz as long as it's, especially in the luxury watch collection, as long as it's doing something different or better. If you're just throwing a cheap quartz movement into a nicely finished watch, okay, sure, you're offering a lot of the same wrist presence in a more affordable, durable, whatever package, but that's not necessarily luxury. But when you're, what you're achieving with the quartz is like an X33 Speedmaster, something that is not possible with mechanics. Or a 9F quartz where the accuracy level is going to be far beyond anything that you're ever going to get with, a mechanical movement. At that point, there's value added, true value added that you couldn't do with a mechanical movement. And I think at that point, you kind of have to, it does deserve a place. If it's not for you, that's fine. And if you'd rather have a mechanical watch, I'd probably rather have a mechanical watch. But does it have a place? 100% absolutely, because on paper stats, durability, timekeeping, cost of maintenance and upkeep, quartz wins every single time.
Yeah.
So it certainly has a place. I just think it has to be done in a meaningful manner, like Grande Seiko or like the Longines VHP stuff, where it's what that's able to do isn't, or a multifunction quartz, a digital watch. Obviously $12 will get you something that'll last 10 years and keep probably pretty good time. It's not exciting, but of course it has a place in your collection.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about you, Emily?
Emily,
I'm
what do you
pretty
think on this?
straightforward, you guys. I love a quartz watch. It's pretty simple for me. I think aesthetically, they look really similar most of the time. Also, simplicity is the name of the game. I've said this before, busy mom, I got things going on, especially to be able to just set it, forget it, pick it back up, wear it when I need it, and it's good to go. Let's go.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we've all agreed on quartz the same, so
That's
it
good.
sounds like we've defended it.
One thing that I wish more brands did, you see it on a couple Grande Seikos, put a display back on that quartz movements. Be proud about it. Don't. Grande Seiko's quartz movements look really nice. A couple of them have a display case back and you get to see it and it's lovely. I think if a brand is earnestly doing quartz and doing it on a meaningful level, don't, show it off a little bit. Say we're doing this deliberately. It's not a cost-cutting thing. We're doing this for the added performance. Put a display back. Engrave the the metal on the quartz movement. Obviously, it's not quite as exciting as a mechanical caliber to look at, but show it off a little bit. Be proud of it. And I think that might give it a little bit more of a home in the luxury watch space.
Hide it under the hood. Show it off a little bit.
I think that would go a long way. A lot of times, it kind of has this stigma. People instantly say quartz and they think about your $10 mall watch.
I think a lot of plastic parts.
Exactly. It's hard to separate those. And I mean, in all fairness, that's what most quartz watches are. So, it's not really, it's understandable how people could feel that way.
And then you think about why brands bother putting display backs on mechanical watches, and it's to show off, like, there's a lot of different mechanical watches. We're doing this on a really high level.
Yes.
Why not do the same thing with quartz?
Absolutely.
There's not as many things moving behind there, but at the same time, show that this is not what's in your $20 Timex when you pop it open.
It's definitely different and special in its own way. And a mechanical watch, I love a mechanical watch. I mean, we all do. I actually like the idea of the mechanical watch better. I mean, it's it has that like romanticism and the intrigue of it's this tiny little machine with all these moving parts keeping this amazing time, and there's just something really cool about that, for lack of a better way to explain it. And quartz is just different, and like you said, I think if they leaned into that, showed it off a little bit more, and kind of highlighted some of those things that are different and better and special about quartz that a mechanical movement can't do, would kind of up the status a little bit, and kind of get people on board and to be a little bit proud of it, or to be like you said on the Seiko movement, it's so accurate that that's something that is definitely different and needs to be shown off and appreciated.
Industry-wide, it sounds like there's a lot of room to kind of show a little bit more love to the quartz watches. We're not saying no to automatic, we're not saying no to mechanical, we're just saying give a little love.
That's what I think, but I know not everyone feels that way. I've met plenty of people who are instantly out of the game if we're talking quartz. They're not interested at all. Is that you? Let us know in the comment below. I mean, we all agree, but I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't. So leave us a comment below. Quartz, are you in? Are you out? We want to know.
All right, the name of the game is debates today, and I'm bringing a fun one to the table when it comes to rectangle watches. Now, obviously, I've got on my Rolex Cellini. Told you this is one of the first watches I ever fell in love with. But when I really am thinking about a rectangle watch, I instantly default to the Cartier tank. But that's not the only rectangle watch that exists. Again, there are many other ones here. But I think the name of this debate for me is do they have a place in your collection? We've got a beautiful Patek Philippe Gondolo here as kind of another option on the table. I would say without question, I am here to defend the fact that they have a place in your collection. I get the beautiful round watches that we all know and love. I just love some variety. And I guess for me, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I firmly believe everyone can play with case shapes. If you don't like a rectangular case, that's fine, but like, is there certainly room for it? I think getting a different case shape is the singular easiest way to like diversify your collection. You have a bunch of round watches, get one that isn't round.
Right.
And
even square can kind of play into this too.
Oh, 100%. And it's also a good practice to just sort of, people often fixate on the numbers involving watches, like, oh, I can't wear anything above a 38, it's got to be between 36 and 40. Rectangular watches are different, you know? Think about the surface area of a rectangle versus a circle. A diameter of a circle, it's versus the width of a rectangle. It's a lot more surface area. And so you can actually get away with surprisingly small rectangular watches because of the footprint being larger. And I think it's, you know, if you wanted to try a smaller watch, getting it in a rectangular format is the great way of making that more approachable. Rather than having a downsized version of something you already own, it's totally different. And obviously, in my opinion, Cartier is the absolute king of rectangular watch. I mean, the Tank and the Santos are two of the oldest designs out there. But between these two on the table, oh my God, that Patek Philippe is stunning. I just take any Cartier off that I will take that Patek.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would have a hard time not getting a Tank or a Santos at some point, but like, gee, just put these two in front of me, I'm going to take the Patek.
Yeah, that Patek is.
Yeah, it's a gold Patek. I mean,
yeah, that's an amazing watch. Not to short the Cartier, like you said, Cartier's king, and when I'm talking, you know, square rectangle, that's probably my go-to.
Yeah.
And I personally, I love square rectangle shapes. I have been less into them lately. When I first started kind of being interested in watches when I was pretty much a kid, right, like high schooler, I had like the biggest rectangle square watch fetish. It was
Really?
like fashion watches, everything I was buying because I was like 18 or so or whatever. I loved it for whatever reason. I was just super into that square / rectangle case shape. And it's kind of a shame that we don't see more of it, right? We see there's a few iconic pieces like, you know, the ones we have on the table. There are the great rectangle square watches, but I feel like they're kind of in their own, it's like their own little collection, right? And it's the same ones, and they say that we don't see a whole lot of new out-of-the-box rectangle stuff, and I think it's kind of a shame. I wish we would see more, and I'm kind of curious to see what people think. Should there be more rectangle watches out there? Would you guys like to see more? Because I mean, it's really a small percentage of watches. If you go out there and you see all the new watches released this year, I mean, most of them are round. It's just, I mean, it kind of makes sense, but I think the case shape's fun. I like it. I think there's absolutely a spot in your collection for it. And I would like to see more of them personally.
Yeah, clearly more than just Cartier kind of
Yes.
leaning into this. I mean, I'm a big Panthera fan, but when it comes to a Santos or a Tank, and even this Gondolo, like, look, I will take all of them. I love the Cellini. I love just a little bit of uniqueness.
Yeah.
And for me, I mixing it up, adding a little bit of variety to my wrist is great. I love your point about leaning into sort of these rectangle or square shapes. They're different than a round watch on your wrist, and especially from a male's perspective, they look great, guys. I really like seeing them.
I think the shape itself lends itself very well to an elegant design. Of course, there are square kind of tooly watches like Bell & Ross that comes to mind probably first and foremost. But I think just that the rectangular shape, you know, look at these two watches here on the table. The distance past the band, if we're talking width, is very, very minimal, where if you look at a round watch, that's not the case at all. It kind of bows out. And if you have a moderately sized one, it creates this very elegant a stance on the wrist where it's this kind of subtle band rather than this thing mounted to your wrist with a strap. And sometimes you see a tiny, tiny Cartier Tank on a relatively large dude, and it looks so good. And you know, the same thing can be said about many rectangular watches, and I think you can pull off a much smaller rectangular watch than you could a circular one just because it's a different aesthetic. And I think with Cartier, they've been making the Tank forever. You have a wealth of choices, same as the Santos. it's not going anywhere. If you want, large Roman numerals, that's the de facto one. But there's a lot of other brands that will play with it, whether it's Nomos or Patek Philippe, or Rolex in the Cellini line. I love the prints. Those
the
four
Prince is a
prints
great
watches,
watch.
so cool, so funky, very elegant.
See, that's where it's like, I wish I would see more of that stuff from Rolex.
And such a non-obvious choice.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like you said, it's different. I love that. I give it some extra points because when you're out in the wild and you see a square watch, it instantly catches my eye, and I'm like, what is that? I'm instantly intrigued, and I want to know what it is. You see so few of them compared to your standard sport watch or round.
And I think that's where it comes around for me. I love Cartier. I absolutely love their design language across the board. Love the Santos, love the tank. But this look of this tank is so familiar to me that if I'm gonna go push the envelope a bit, get myself a non-traditional case shape, get a rectangular watch, I don't know if I want to get the most quintessential example of the non-traditional watch. I love it, granted, but I think just this particular Patek offers a little bit more visual intrigue, and if I'm trying to bring myself out of my horological comfort zone, I think that Patek would be the one for me.
I like it. So we see square watches. We almost always see them as a dress watch. So I want to know, where are all our square sport watches?
So it's harder to waterproof a square crystal profile. A circle, think a bottle, it's easy, it's a singular continuous surface. When you start looking at the border of a crystal where you've got right angles, getting that seated, the type of gaskets, think of a rectangular case back, you'll probably want something to fit. And so if you look at a lot of the square tool watches, they'll often have a circular dial like a Bell & Ross, or they'll kind of bolt together sandwich style. I think from a physical standpoint, it's easier, how do you make a rotating bezel on a rectangular watch? So I think from a physical functional standpoint, it's easier to make a more robust design round. In the same way that when you're making something super elegant and slim, a rectangular one makes a really, really svelte profile. So I think that's probably where we're at, but I would love to see, modern manufacturing technologies, we can make iPhones and stuff, like we can definitely make a watch that looks like this and has a similar stance that's good to like 200 meters.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be out of the box. It would be different. And I'm sure they exist, right? We're just looking at the Nautilus, right? And that's, it's not quite as sharp as the Cartiers or,
Yeah, and then you get into some of the tonneau shapes, some of the resharp.
Yeah, so there is some stuff that's like kind of there, but as a whole, most of the square watches are dress, and most of the sport watches are round.
And even so, we're kind of leaning into the same designs year after year, even from Cartier. So it's something to consider.
So I'd like to see something new.
Maybe we'll bring that King Midas back here soon.
Yes, that would be really good.
I'd like to see the Midas return as a sports watch.
Ooh.
Will never happen.
Yeah. That would be, yes, that would be an interesting one.
Just in the world of hopes and dreams, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, be sure to let us know where you guys fall in on this part of the conversation. Obviously, we've got the guys and their glorious debates as well. We really appreciate you guys leaning into the debate style as well and giving us some ideas. Promise this won't be the last, so be sure to let us know what else we can kind of bring to the table in future episodes. So, you guys, wonderful conversation as always. Thanks so much for joining us. Until then, you guys, we'll see you next time.